Hey everyone, and welcome to Comic Breakdown. If you're new to the channel, do me a favor and hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, and make sure you're not missing any of the content we have coming out. Because today we are diving into Future State Superman Worlds of War, issue number 2, which will be closing out the Worlds of War line coming from Future State. Now, if you haven't been keeping up with this issue, if you haven't been keeping up with this line, be sure to check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It'll get you completely caught up on everything Future State related. Every single issue, we have not missed a single one, so please go check it out. And with that being said, let's dive into this issue. Alright guys, issue number 2. Now, I can finally correct my mistake that many of you let me know that I made. When I said that this was Darkseid, I definitely meant to say it was Mongul. That was my bad, 100%, I apologize. But last issue, we saw Superman on Warworld battling, trying to save slaves that are forced to fight along his side. And we saw a girl trying to connect to Clark Kent because he's gone from this world and many people saw him as a savior. And so with him being gone, many people are seeking some kind of connection to him again. And so it picks us up with this girl, and one of the individuals chase her down, and they're just having a talk. He's asking where she's going, and she says that she's going somewhere she wants to see before she leaves. And he has to know, he has to ask her what she meant when she said Clark Kent saved her. And she says exactly what I said. But it had nothing to do with because he could run fast or hit hard. It was because of something he wrote. Something he wrote when she really needed it. And it helped her find some kind of purpose in her life. Pulled her away from the edge. And so she wasn't trying to be disrespectful to everybody back at the memorial, but they're all looking for Superman while she's looking for Clark Kent. Now, I'm going to read this story that Clark Kent wrote. And as I'm reading this story, it's going to go through the panels of Superman fighting in the arena. Now, this is how the comic plays out, so you're not missing anything, I promise you. And when I need to interject, I will. But for the most part, I'm going to read over this article because it really is very heartwarming and worth telling. And so this is titled A Life Well Lived. And it goes like this. A man died this morning in Metropolis. He died with no home, no family, no job, and no possessions beyond the clothes he wore. Anyone who saw him in his final days would not have seen a man to be envied. But having had the privilege to know him, I maintain that his life was one anyone would be proud to have lived. And I now feel compelled to share this story. In December of 1942, a 22-year-old African-American piano player by the name of Edgar Waters, or Waiters, I believe it's Waters though, was walking to an audition. On the way, a headline caught his eye, and for 5 cents he bought the newspaper for the first time. He read about a faraway land he knew nothing about where a new world order set out to enslave and exterminate its enemies, World War II and the Nazis. He of course knew that the world was at war, but he had a foot deformity that exempted him from the draft. His entire life had been about music, and he thought about little else. But after reading about the atrocities being committed overseas, something changed in him. He felt an obligation. His foot became the first of many obstacles he would overcome to do what he had to do. And in coming months, a young man who was raised as an artist and loved Count Basie, Art Tatum, and Duke Ellington would learn the ways of killing, would learn the ways of war. And you can see in ways Superman is almost, Clark Kent is almost writing about himself. Not necessarily that he is this individual, but that he can relate to him on so many levels. And we start to see that more and more in his writing as we go along. And we're also seeing him as I'm reading along, we're seeing him battling all of these things, but he's losing these fights. And it's not faring well for those that are under his protection. Now, continuing on with the story, the man had traveled halfway across the world to save a race of people he did not know. He fought many battles, and in his words, lost a bit of his humanity each time. His greatest test came on the beaches of Normandy, when he was immediately wounded, a wound that should have killed him. He spent the next 30 hours crawling from wounded to wounded, keeping his brothers in arms alive while struggling to retain consciousness himself. And although his actions that day brought him pride, he was called to do other things in the war that haunted him for the rest of his life. Killing soldiers, he said, was a terrible price we paid to save the lives of the innocent. And after the war, Waters helped bring democracy and equality to Germany, even while serving in a segregated army unit. Upon returning to Metropolis, he and his fellow veterans became some of the earliest champions of civil rights, and he was one of dozens of men who led a march on City Hall protests. There he suffered a fractured skull where they viciously attacked by counter-protests. But to the attacker's surprise, Waters fought back hard, and he alone was arrested and imprisoned. That night he had been beaten even further by other prisoners and hospitalized. After he was released, he got his right back and jumped right back into the fight. He had lost a son. He had lost a wife not long after that. He had founded a scholarship in his son's name and dedicated his life to raising money for that scholarship. Years later, he organized anti-war protests and rallies. The people of the 12th Precinct began to know him by name. Because of the definitive limp, he started going or being called Crutch. And at the hospital, they call him Sarge. He had ran for public office, but had never won an election. But he was well known to not let his voice go unheard, never let any community in Metropolis be marginalized. Even in his final months, when he slept in alleys and homeless shelters, he wrote letters and made calls on borrowed phones to ensure the continuation of the scholarship that bore his son's name. Someone who says Edgar only at his lowest might have thought him a failure. A failure, a man who willing to face death to save countless lives on foreign shores. A fighter who fought for those who could not and would not fight for him. A citizen who demanded his leaders give him a voice and give voice to the voiceless. A father who risked bodily harm to ensure his son would be treated justly, and honored that man's memory by giving 54 young men and women a brighter future. A man whose resolve never faltered, even as he lost everything, time and time again. A man whose sense of service to his fellow man was only strengthened with each loss. Edgar was a man who taught us about life and how to be lived, right up until the day that he was taken from us. And this is when we see, over the course of this fight that Superman has been fighting, he's been losing drastically. And Mongul comes down after blasting everybody on the battlefield. And he lets him know that that was pathetic. That he didn't lay a single sword smash down on anybody. None of them bled because of Superman. And Superman lets him know the fighters weren't the target. And this is when we see everybody that was a prisoner now free. And then we pick up with the girl, and they arrive at the old Clark Kent farm. This is the place she wanted to see. And as they're walking across the field, they run into a bunker. The bunker that most of us know houses the rocket that brought Superman to Earth. And picking back up on Warworld, we see Mongul having Superman tied up, torturing him, telling him how many times he's going to have to slay him and resurrect him. How many slaves has he failed to save? One day, he's not going to remember anything about his life. He's not going to remember his wife, his son. He's not going to remember his own name. He will just be a soldier of Warworld. And he tells Mongul, no, I won't leave until I've broken every chain on Warworld. On that day, when every slave is free, every life you've taken is paid for, then, only then, will I go home. And Superman closes out his article with, I call on each of us to remember this man. Remember him, not just by the name, but by the life he lived. By striving to live as he did. By protecting those in need. By demanding truth from our leaders. Justice from our courts. By leaving great works for those who follow us. By standing ever taller when we are knocked down. And if we should start fighting because accolades never come, because our opponents or even our allies belittle us, or because the fight seems greater than we have to give, then the accolades were never ours. And we must find a way within ourselves to find that bravery, as selfless and is steadfast as our service to all mankind. And this is where we see Superman in the arena with the crowd all having broken chains. Now, this is supposed to be continued in Superman House of El issue number 1. So we're going to find out exactly what happens in the House of El. Now, there are a couple other issues in this one. We will cover them at another time in other videos. So yeah, this closes out Superman Worlds of War. What do you guys think? You know, there was a lot of dialogue. It's talking about a World War II veteran, somebody that really truly did fight for freedom. And in his day and age, his era, he truly did fight for civil rights. And he was fighting against people that legitimately did not want black people to have rights, to be in the same schools, to have the same health care, whatever the case may be. And so this is someone that Superman looks up to. And this article helped give this little girl hope. Not in Superman, but the ability of mankind. What one individual can do. What one person who just was good at music, who loved music, who had a foot deformity, but still overcame it and went to war, came back to the United States and helped his community, made it better. This is a hero to look up to, a hero worthy of even Superman to look up to, and to humble us and to remind us to live like this man. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you have not yet, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. Be sure to check out Comic Breakdown and More podcasts, available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes every Friday. Be sure, don't miss them out. If you enjoy it, be sure to leave a review on the iTunes. And until the next video.